The News Hour.
Ellie Fiorentini.
BBC Radio York.
But we begin tonight with a story that's just broken in the last couple of hours. Council taxpayers in York look likely to be paying more. The Labour-controlled City of York Council is proposing a 2.9% increase. BBC Radio York's Mike Kemp was at this afternoon's announcement. So what's been said, Mike?
Well, this was the Labour group putting forward their budget for the next 2 years. It's still to go to the Council's Cabinet on February the 14th and to full Council, a meeting of all City Councillors on February the 23rd for approval. Now, the Council, like all other local authorities, had the option of, instead of putting up council tax, of freezing it and taking the equivalent of 2.5% from the government. But they're not planning on doing that. What is being proposed is a 2.9% increase in council tax, and the council has to save almost £20 million over the next 2 years. James Alexander, who's the council's Labour leader, has been explaining why they're proposing to putting up the council tax.
I've spoken to many of my colleagues who are lead councils in the region, and quite a few of them are obviously taking the council tax freeze money. Last year, the government had a council tax freeze scheme. The money was the equivalent of 2.5% of council tax, and it was for a freeze in the first year, but you got that money every year for 4 years. This year, it's very different. You get the money for 1 year, and then it's gone. So in which case, some of my colleagues in the region will be using council reserves to be able to pay for that shortfall next year. Our reserves are at legal minimum. They were £11 million in 2008, and the Liberal Democrats have spent that down to just over £6 million when we took control in May. So therefore we have no reserves to be able to actually plug that hole next year. And as we're setting a prudent 2-year budget, it would show within the budget how we were going to fund that in the second year. And the consequences of that is either a higher council tax increase next year or more cuts in services. So in which case we've taken the prudent approach of keeping council tax low with a 2.9% increase, but clearly showing that it doesn't make financial sense for the council to be able to actually take that buy now, pay later attitude to council services.
How does York compare with places like North Yorkshire?
Well, at the moment, York is looking like one of about 15 local authorities in England which are putting up their council tax, compared to about 150 which have signalled their intention of freezing or even cutting their council tax. As we heard earlier this week, North Yorkshire County Council, which is Conservative controlled, is one of those looking to freeze their council tax. Now, one senior county councillor said at the time that there is nothing morally right taking money out of people's pockets when they needn't do so. Now, I put that point to James Alexander.
I would say is exactly right, which is why next year we are ensuring that that doesn't happen. Whereas actually in North Yorkshire County Council, you may see a situation whereby they either have to use their reserves, which they're totally entitled to do so, or further council tax increases higher than what we're looking at, or even greater service cuts than what we're looking at.
Now, he says that next year, that's for the 2013-14 financial year, the City Council is assuming a council tax rise of 2%, though that could change, whereas North Yorkshire County Council may be looking at a rise of 3.5%.
So the council is having to save almost £20 million over the next 2 years. Where are those savings being made?
Well, you heard James Alexander describing this 2-year budget as a prudent budget, but he did say that during their deliberations, they seriously considered closing all libraries, along with some children's centres and leisure centres, but he says they backed away from that. Instead, they're looking to share more services, such as administration, with other councils. There'll be more job losses, more than 100 this year, though they are part of an earlier announcement to shed 650 jobs over 5 years, and to put up car parking for residents by 20p and non-residents by 10p, and to reduce some services such as bin collections. Now, some extra money is being ploughed into the care of the elderly and children. As a result, James Alexander said it wasn't all bad news.
I would say that this is very, very tough decisions, but it's done in a way to secure the future. And also there is a lot of good news in this budget as well. We're looking at the creation of a £30 million economic infrastructure fund to get the local economy moving. That's one of the biggest investments this council has ever put into the local economy. And just to put it in context, the government gave £26 million in the Growing Places Fund for the whole of the Leeds City region. We're talking about £30 million just for York. And I think that the private sector will see that as a very good thing to be able to boost jobs and economic growth, because the only way that we're going to help the most vulnerable people in society is making sure that they're in work and that our economy is growing.